So over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about coming to our senses, right? Experiencing God through the five senses. And if you remember, we looked at the first week, we looked at the sense of taste. And we were called to taste the Lord and know that He is good. And we talked about how David, in the psalm that he was Psalm 54, and how he was at the lowest point of his life, and he still was praising God. And I pointed out that we're just not effective in our evangelism. We're not effective in our walk if we haven't really tasted that the Lord is good. If we know who God is, and we've tasted and know that He is good, then it just comes out in our lives around, even during. Last we talked about the sense of touch. We saw how touch may be one of the most, or may be the most important sense that we have. How touch is so important to infants as they are born, and then children and in our lives. If you remember, we talked, because we didn't have the puppets, we talked to the kids that were here. You know, when you're feeling down, what's the one thing that you want most? And the kids all answered hugs, right? Touch is so important. We saw in the text, and when we were talking about touch, how God Himself became human, became man, so that He could touch us. We talked about how God uses touch, His touch, through us to touch others around us. People see God in you. You help us. That is God's touch to those around us. And this week we're going to talk about smell, sense of smell. So while touch may be the most important sense, smell could very well be the most powerful that we have. Certain smells are nostalgic, aren't they? Right? If you get a whiff of something, that smell brings back those old memories and things come rushing in. You sit in somebody that maybe is not so pleasant smelling, and the first thing you want to do is get up and leave, right? Smell is really powerful. And smell, at least according to studies, is really closely linked with memory. It's really kind of interesting. We remember these things and we link them into our thoughts and stuff, and it's really hard to get that out. If we have a encounter with somebody, the next time we meet them, that comes up. Even if the smell's not there. Or if we do have a smell, it comes in and immediately it comes up. As a matter of fact, realtors use the sense of smell in selling of houses. You guys ever been to an open house and they've baked cookies or bread in the house? It's because it gives that homey feeling, and it just gives you that urge to want to settle in. Interestingly, of all the senses, though, smell is probably the hardest one that we can link with God. What does God smell like? Right? It's one of the most difficult things that we can combine with our relationship with God. And you start to think about this. How do you talk to a God who smells? Whether He smells, He has a bad aroma, or whether He smells and can smell our aroma. Think about it. How do we reconcile the idea that we, in our lives, might smell bad to God? When you think about it, and if you've ever been out and about doing different outreach events or in different occasions where you've had an opportunity to be near either a street person, you know, somebody that's living on the street, or somebody whose hygiene is less than ideal, that smell is pretty overpowering, isn't it? Can you imagine what the smell of our sin must be like for God? So it's really hard to this. How do we do this? How do we put this together? Especially when we start talking about smells and memory. Because if smells and memory are linked to us, wouldn't you assume that they're linked in God also? But the scriptures tell us that God put smell and pleasant memories together in our lives. This starts off Genesis chapter 8, verse 20. Noah sacrificed burnt offerings. It was a sacrifice of thanksgiving, if you remember. And the text tells us what God's reaction was. We are told that the Lord smelled pleasing. Will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. The anger of God was replaced by peace because he smelled the aroma of an offering. 16 different times in the book of Leviticus, the word aroma is used, and it's mentioned as something pleasing to the Lord. And in all those cases, it is the aroma of a sacrifice. So the important thing to remember in all of this, as we go through the text, it always comes up, the importance of the sacrifice's aroma, the smell of what it is, but what the smell represents. It represents the substitutionary atonement for sin. The sacrifice is put on there as a substitute, and God says it was a pleasant aroma. Reveals Christ and the ultimate aroma. This is cracking? Yeah. Let's go to it's number 1.